clearly experienced. Okay. Similar is, for example, the concept of God, just the opposite. The referent of God seems to be plainly clear to everyone. But the reality of God, I would say, nobody seems to understand. By their own discussions and discussions about God. Somebody says God is love, but they don't have any love, for example. So God is just the opposite. The referent of God is very clear. For somebody it is Shiva or Raman or Krishnan or Hanuman or Saraswati or Lakshmi or Brahman or whatever it is, they have some image. That is evidenced by the concept they use the second person, what you call he. There is some kind of an objectified thing somewhere. But the reality is not perceived. Because the reality of God must be ever present everywhere. By the simple principle that God knows everything. So that is a different concept. We may come to that. All these concepts you will have advantages later. Yeah, what is the referent reality of original mind? Or what is the referent of original mind? Is that a referent or is it a referent reality? This is partly a question to understand your understanding about referent reality and referent, etc. You understood the concept of original mind now. Now just try, experiment. Is it a referent or a referent reality? By your own concept about original mind.
It's a referent because each.
Yeah, right, proceed.
I was thinking it's a referent because each person's original mind will have a reality of its own, but then it's not an original mind. Then that's what.
Okay, I want you to just reflect upon that, yeah. So according to Tintin, original mind is a referent. That means what? Can you explain? Can you interpret when you say that? Interpret meaning, can you explain what you said?
When we were talking about mind, we were not able to get a feel or a kind of a locus of it. But with respect to the original mind, there is a
Ah,
perception or a locus we were able to come to.
okay, beautiful. Correct. Yes, that's true. You are able to fix more on that than about the very mind itself. Very true. Though that referent itself is in the ultimately subtle realm. That's a different issue. It is an ultimately subtle realm. But we are quite comfortable to consider the possibility of a referent there. That's what Tintin said, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And Veena also got it. That's why she asked that question. Now there comes the next when you do interpretation, there will be a lot of recommendations, questions, etc. Then now the referent of original mind is clear, but the referent reality of that original mind is not clear. See, get the point.
Yes, sir.
That is what we are waiting for. When you come across the reality of that referent called original mind, that is the moment of satori. That's the moment when your axe slip out of it and hit the target. Or when the axe slip out of the handle and hit the target, then you see the reality of the original mind. So you continue to do either that reflection. So just be aware of that. You have to be aware of that. See, the woodcutter was aware. It is not that
It's
woodcutter, because he was
21:45.
all the more aware because Satori continued to attack him much more boldly. You see, regardless of that, he continued to do his doing. That also implies the referent reality of the woodcutter, that he was really aware that this thing is attacking me and disturbing me. I want to get rid of it. That was a very silent thought in his subconscious or in his conscious mind. But his will chose to continue the activity of cutting the trees because it is to be cut and it has to go back home. It is getting dark. Whatever reason. So there is that gentle awareness. This I told you the other day. That gentle, when you sit in so-called meditation, going absolutely silent, in a silent location, after about 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, depending upon your experience in that, the speed of the condense, the speed of the flow of the condense in the inside will reduce and reduce and reduce. Then, if you have that attention to see that empty screen, it is possible. But that awareness should be there. In that context, when I said you should have a gentle awareness only. You should not be sitting for meditation. In my case, my father used to do a lot of things with me. As a result, I developed the practice of whenever I am free kind of thing. I would just let that sit and try to focus on certain things. Just like that one day, one afternoon, after lunch, I suppose, I think, I think now in retrospective, that was the day there had nothing else to do. Okay, let me sit like that. Precisely then it happened. I remember that very clearly. I don't know, but I don't remember very clearly whether every time else I was sitting for it or not. But that day I remember very clearly. Nothing to do, uh, nothing to read. I always used to read some novels or write. Nothing to do. Okay, let me do like this. So I don't know what told me to do that. I did not have any intention. I tried it and nothing was happening. On that day, I did not have any intention also. I'm just telling that. So similarly, the woodcutter was going on cutting, but definitely he was aware of the disturbance, or rather his attention was trying to focus upon the possible original mind. Same is you're doing. You don't have to necessarily sitting in meditation. But some focused, innocent attention is required to your every doing. As I told you the other day, most of your activities now are taken for granted because you do only those things that are familiar to you. Rediscover, re-relate, get out of all this. Now approach your food as if you approach it for the first time. Wherever you remember, you apply that. Nobody will see, nobody is noticing. But direct your attention. Do not look at that plate of food the way you look at. You look at that food as if your first food, or let us say as your last food. If it is your last food on earth, what will be the attention? Maybe it is a little bit anxiety provoking to think like that. Okay, forget about that. I just said in a metaphorical way. You don't need to have that approach. You can look at, you just focus your attention on the details of that thing. Yesterday, Amaya was asking, These mountains are all the time there. I am not able to look at it as new. I said, you are looking at mountain itself, you said, taken for granted thing. Look at one part of it. Today you look at that left side curve. Tomorrow you look at the next point of height. Day after tomorrow you take another portion. And when you finish it again, you come back to the first one. Similarly, you today maybe your some dinner is over. When you go to the plate of food, you can choose to look at that plate which is carrying the whichever. Look at the plate. When you look at the plate, you will remember that you have never looked at the plate before in the way you looked at it. So just look at it. Look at that piece of rice or chapati or whatever. See it. Let your creature see that. Creature should be allowed. Creature does not talk. I told you sometime back, the universe is nothing but an infinite assemblage of referents, and none of the referents talk. Only human beings have this wonder or the curse of ongoing language in the mind. Everything is seen from that language uh, framework. Attention is immediately taken over by that language. No, it doesn't matter. So you look at that piece of chapati, look at it in the contour, and then go on every time. Tomorrow also it is the same. You may see that it is the same chapati, but it is not the same. It may look the same, and then you can proceed because that referent of chapati has the reality that your wife made it, or your mother made it, or your son made it, or daughter made it, or you made it with your hands. Of course, I am talking about the linkages of the real, which will come later when we talk about variant invariant linkages. And look at your wife. Look at her. Look at her eyes alone. Normally you see the totality, that's why you take it for granted. Look at her eyes today. Look at her from the vantage point of her having that eyes. Tomorrow you look at her hairdo, or when you see next time. And gradually, within about 1 week or 2 weeks, by doing like this, I am sure you will develop it because I know it is with me. It is a possibility with us because it's all mindsets. As I told you, till yesterday I was interacting with you, with a girl, very intimately, and then my friend says that it's as if we both of you are in love here. Otherwise, how can you do like this to her and how can she do this for you? All right. Okay. Tomorrow I go and tell her I love you. Everything changes. Either it becomes a so-called same thing will be continued from the framework of I love you, or everything will be cancelled on that day. One of these two will happen. Just by one dialogue. So these are all not silly examples, the same procedure. Now you can have gradual approach to your original mind. Concepts are given. Now it is your challenge to discover it. So, see, we have not been, now, as I told you, your approach to Sunday has changed. These are the things you have to start analyzing your familiarity with them. All these are taken for granted. All the familiar concepts, all the familiar things, all the familiar acts, all familiar locations has to be reinvestigated. That's what I showed. And that is indirectly a training to later locate to the original mind also. You can, in the beginning, you can take about 30 seconds or 1 minute. So, the way to conquer familiarity trap or that familiarity and internal dialogue is to change at least the focus of your attention. So, when you look
Sorry,
in
can
the,
you repeat that,
no
sir?
problem. When you look in the eyes of someone, you see only the eyes. There will not be some familiar stream of consciousness because you will have to have some reconceptualization there because you are looking only at the eyes. Or if you have the, you can use anything. As I told you, choose always the most taken for granted things. Then gradually you will develop a tendency to look at the familiar, ever familiar thought process that are happening in you. If you recollect, if you are good in introspection, you will realize that almost 90% of the thoughts you have every day are more or less repetition of the thoughts you had yesterday only. Even if it is your work situation. See, because you think a new line, that doesn't make any difference. What are the things that are going in your mind when you are cooking? More or less the same thoughts only, which you had yesterday or today morning. What are the thoughts you have in your mind when you walk around in the rooms of your house? More or less same thoughts only, or similar thoughts only. Sometimes it could be even identical thoughts. So when you look at a different aspect, you will at least have a different thoughts, different set of thoughts. It is not easy to bring in a new thought in your stream of consciousness. Then the strategy is to look at that thought itself. This thought I had yesterday also. Oh, this is a thought which I always have. Something like that you do instead of being a witness to the ongoing stream of consciousness. These are all little tricky. When you hear this, it is simple, but when you do this, as I told you, the simplest steps will lead to much larger consequences. So again, I'm telling you to be careful because as of now, actually, you are kind of sort of what you call just victims of your consciousness, your familiar self. There may come a point when you may feel yourself becomes a little unfamiliar. That can be a point of shock. You have to be very careful. In order to become careful, in order to give you that gravity only, I talk a whole lot of connected things, Reena. Right now, that your will or your attention or your consciousness is comfortable because that consciousness is familiar with the consciousness, the current consciousness of you, or the current self of you for the last 5 years, 6 years, 10 years. The change, whatever little changes, there is not basically much change. The same thing is continuing with the same pattern of thought process which it always had. So when it starts, when that attention, or when one part of your consciousness, let us say so, or when your attention is sort of sensing that the you become unfamiliar to you, it could be a tricky point. That's what I said. Then, as I said again, change your location, take 2-3
It's
deep breaths.
22 hours.
You definitely will feel a moment of anxiety, no doubt about that. That is the indication. As soon as you feel the anxiety, just get out of the situation wherever you are standing, make a movement of the body, take 2-3 deep breaths, drink water, wash your face thoroughly. What you call splash water onto your face. And gradually you'll become familiar. Then, when you become that original individual, you know what is the consequence. You become original, you will become very different. People will feel you, people will know you, people will automatically listen to you. You become powerful, you become somebody. Even if people listen to you or not, things will happen in a different way. Unless you agree, nobody can do anything to you. Because when you are in tune with the you, so this is the dialogue which I am giving you, to trust you. Because when you come closer to your original self, it will never put you down. Okay. So, but the moment you enter that room, it is very strange. Therefore, you may feel a little bit shivering. But face it, after some time, you will come out with a feeling of victorious self-image. All right. So you have to understand that moment of anxiety. For example, let us say you look at for example, your wife. She will immediately notice it. She may ask you, why are you looking at me like this? And just give a very mild example. Similarly, when you look at you in a different way, that internal, unconsciously maintained self-assembly may feel little different. So it will ask you a question, who are you? There will be a distancing. So that could be a moment of you're feeling a little bit unfamiliar about you. I will not talk more than this, because more talking of this, if I do not talk carefully, that itself can be a problem. Therefore, I am choosing only very conducive ideas, though a little bit potentially tricky. The path to Everest top is dangerous. Whatever be the Everest, whether it is the internal Everest or it is tough, you may have to work hard. Work hard will include negotiating this kind of critical turning points. That's the reason why you reflected not completely. We reflected only one side of the word of the master cook. Because master cook cannot take any moment for granted. because he is peeping into the room of the most dangerous entity, or he is doing a most dangerous process. That is possible. I told you I have interviewed about 16 to 18 thieves. They are all ordinary people. In fact, all of them, except one or two, three, at least school educated or college educated. Other people were non-discrete people from sort of some kind of a maybe poor family or a disrupted family, whatever it is. What about their confidence in self? Just imagine. I'm talking about thieves, not robbers. Robbers are a little different. Robbers are ready to attack somebody or kill somebody. A thief will never kill. I mean, that is the real situation. I don't know whether modern thieves would do that, but ideally it's like that. So anyway, whether they're killing or not, forget about that. But look at his level of confidence. He's entering into a place for the first time. I don't know whether I told you about the last thief I interviewed at Ernakulam. He was arrested. He was a thief, of course. Only a thief can be a thief. He was not a first-time thief anyway. He stole the gold ornaments and the money, opening the what you call locked wooden cabinet kept in the centralmost room of just on the day of the previous day of the marriage of the daughter of a circle inspector of police. And you know that there was what you call all tents and all. It was not so-called Sandhya in a room. It was in a village near Piravam. I remember Piravam village. So a huge shed with tarpaulin and all was constructed. About 30 people are cutting vegetables, etc., etc. Tomorrow is the marriage. Some 2,000 people, etc. There were about 30 people in the very kitchen itself, not kitchen in that area. Then all the relatives were there. Some of them were sleeping in the what you call that under the whatever. Some of them, most of them were sleeping. Yeah, he said it was about 2 o'clock. That room was open because one of the relatives, a young girl who got married, and she had a little baby infant, and she was to be given proper place. So she was sleeping in that room where the money containing almari was placed. Therefore, the main door was open. Otherwise, it was locked. He would open that door also. That's a different issue. So he opened the almari and took all the things. But because of his lack of general knowledge, I would say, he tried to snatch the chain of this mother. He did not have the general knowledge that a young mother is alert in deep sleep. So she made a sound. But he escaped. He was not caught. Just imagine, he was not caught. He was caught only subsequently. Then I asked him a question in Malayalam. There was so much of chili being what you call fried, and even the cooks could be, what you call that, sneezing and cough and all those things. Okay, there are so many people there, and he said he walked over some of the people who were lying in the other rooms above their bodies. Then asked him, if a knuckle sound comes from your leg, what will happen? That was my question. എന്താണ് ഞൊട്ട ആ വാക്ക് തന്നെ അന്ന് എനിക്ക് ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു. Then this guy was telling me, sir, എൻ്റെ കാലിൻ്റെ പെരുവിരലിലെ നഖം പോലും ഞാൻ പറയുന്ന അനുസരിക്കുന്നു. That was his reply. That, to understand, for the understanding of Naveen and Ramesh, he told me that the nail of his toe would obey his command. That was his response. So, look at that. Because I was looking at that only to know the power of our attention. And I will tell you another example. That is about a psychological phenomenon called psychopath. Psychopaths are normally great, so-called by legal terms, great criminals, especially who do the so-called serial killing. They are called psychopaths.
Yes, sir.
Now, the mystery about the psychopaths is that they just don't do any attempt to hide. They walk around in the public like they were walking around all the time. The case of Ripper, Jack the Ripper in London. He killed some about 20 whatever number of people, and the entire Scotland Yard and top police they were searching everywhere. And after about, you can see perhaps in the internet, after about 3 years or 4 years only he was caught. He was just walking around very cool. Same is the case with somebody in Calicut in Kerala state, whose name was Raman Raghavan. He also killed some 9 or 10 people by hitting their head with a hammer, iron hammer. He also was caught only after about a year or something like that. Anyway, not in first month or second month. Then he was an ordinary person living in Calicut town. The mysterious magic I want your attention to here is, according to their consciousness, they have not done it. That's why they are called psychopathic personality. They are not aware that they have done it. Though they have done it. That's why when they are caught, they told all the stories of how they killed, etc., in every detail. But to all consciousness of them, they have not done it. The point of magic or the mystery, absolute mystery, is that when the consciousness is so clear that I have not done it, the entire Scotland Yard police cannot locate him. He is not hiding anywhere, mind you. He is walking around the way he has been all the time living and walking around and moving with people. And when the Scotland Yard finally caught the Ripper, they all knew him. They have seen him hundreds of times. Do you see the mystery of or the wonder of when you are in tuning? When such a consciousness is in tuning with the itself, you know what all things are possible. In such a case, if I tell you, for example, and just for example, which you can definitely try, I am telling you. Someone is coming to you and telling you that, I have a major problem. And you listen to that and you just say, okay, by the third day it will be over. Just say that. If you achieved a doubtless tuning with your consciousness, I am sure on the third day his problem will be mysteriously solved. Or someone comes to you with a so-called physical illness, some serious illness or some process illness. He is not able to walk properly for the last 10 years. You say, don't worry, within 1 month it will be over. Just say that. It should be very clear. It should be firm. Try it. He may forget it or he may say, oh, sir, you told me that third day it will be over. Oh, I see. Oh. You say that. But I am sure you will be surprised. It may happen even at the first instance itself. That's what I have done to you. This is what I told Nitya. Nitya did not mention here, about which I have not such an opinion. She got 2 unexpected promotions in the last 3 months. In a government office, okay? And that too, the last one was to a department where I suppose, I don't remember what she was written, to some department with some major responsibility about which she did not have much experience. This, that is okay. This I had told her 6 months back. Not exactly like that. In a way, this is the essence by which people say you need the blessings of your guru. When you go and touch your teacher, he almost melts away, melts, and he just with all his heart, with no element of any other concern, he just says, "Oh my boy, everything will work okay for you." I would say, depending upon his autonomic nervous system integrity, it will definitely happen. Those who are convinced about it, they only say it is all my guru. Whether it's a musician or a film director or an actor, I have interviewed at least about 800 so-called highly creative people in various fields. Not a proper interview. Interview may be with about 30, 40 people, but my every meeting is a kind of an interview for me. I told you, I even interviewed Patanjali. If you can hear the sound of the forest, you can hear the sound of the guy who wrote those lines. If every sentence is an expression of the mental processes or the intellectual process of the writer, looking at the sentence, you can see the gravity of the writer. That almost everybody does, but you can do it much better. So then it becomes a statement out of your original mind. That's an example of the presence of original mind. As I told you, when you touch the legs of a common mathematics teacher before the exam, he has to do, for a moment, he loses all his identity because this boy has touched his feet. Then he completely sort of melts away and his old mindset contents are sort of suspended for a moment, and out of all he just flows out to this boy and says, "My dear boy, I bless you." And it will work. It has to work. But of course it depends upon the integrity of the total event. So you try this. Not for a testing, but you, when someone comes, listen to it, look at that person fully and listen to him completely. When you completely see the referent and the referent realities of what that person talks, then your mindsets are almost suspended. Do you see it, Tindon? And then you say, tell him, don't worry, your problems will be over by tomorrow. But don't try to test it in that way. But I said you test it, but do not test it. Test it, but don't test it. But be ready for that. If it comes to you, do not block it by the logic that, oh, if I make the statement, I will become a fool. Do not think like that. It should be an effortless, doubtless statement from your side. Or rather, I want you to reach that stage. I don't know. Otherwise, there is no use of my training you. Whether you reach that level tomorrow or next month or next year, you have to reach there, and you will reach there. Then you just inform me. That is indirectly you are testing your original mind. What is original? It originates. Do you see, my dear friends? Every child is in effect originating that response. People just don't see what is happening. Because the environment is continuously telling Amma, 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 Amma. Okay, the child heard it. But that does not directly imply that the child will reproduce it. It was nevertheless originated from the entity of the child. But because the environment made that continuous sounding and it happens everywhere, so they don't see the reality of that referent of the child talking that language. The referent reality perception is not happening. For the child, it was an original response.
So can you explain that once more, sir?
Yeah, okay. It is little bit tricky, you know. The environment, the child's consciousness is alert. It is fully original conscious. Then the mother figure is there and saying Amma, Amma. Then only the child will repeat. And the child at one moment it utters that sound Amma, Amma. For that child, it was originating from within. Of course, the model was given, but for the child, it was an original act. It originated in the child. Because it is provided by the environment, we think that the child learned it because we have again words. This is an example of looking at the world from the available languages. In the psychology, in the stupid literature of psychology, we say it is learning. And they don't understand okay, what is the referent of the word learning? What is the referent of that process? By learning, they're simply disregarding it and then writing off. What is the process involved in that so-called learning? Learning is a very peripheral term. It doesn't say anything. What the child has done is, child has produced that sound, Amma. Okay, it heard that sound. So what? Sorry to use the example. You hear a song 200 times, will you be able to sing that song? Unless it originates in you. Similarly,
But sir, what about that rote learning? You say E is equal to MC squared and A plus B whole squared. That is also I am
no, no,
listening
no,
and repeating.
they are all just rote learning by language only. You cannot teach E is equal to MC squared to a little baby. You tell him E is equal to MC squared, E is equal to MC squared, the child may repeat that language. Like Urvi used to say, I am a genius. Child may reproduce that language. Like so you can tell a 2-year-old child, E is equal to MC squared, E is equal to MC squared. The child will sound that. That sounding is originated. E is equal to MC squared. That sounding of that word originated in him. That's what I said. Where it is Amma or E is equal to MC squared, it is the same for child. That's why some children call daddy, some children call acha. Uh, 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 my so-called children call me Swami. That's the term they have given. They have been exposed to. Rote learning is rote learning because by that time language is developed. That's why rote learning is rote. They have just mastered that language only. Veena. They have not seen the referent or referent reality or anything. They have just mastered the language. That's why I have declared in my book Every subject in the world is nothing but a language. Whether it is the subject of God or philosophy or chemistry or maths or engineering or architecture or design whatsoever, they are all nothing but a language. So they have they have mastered that language. Those who have mastered it very well, they get an A plus. Others get an A, whatever it is. They have not mastered the doing of it. They have not mastered perception of even the tip of the referent of it sometimes. They just got a tip of the referent, that's all. So original mind has originality. It does not mean just like the original parts of a car, the first thing. Original mind has originality. That's the next point which we talk about. Because it is the source of everything. How all this knowledge happened to people? How Patanjali got all these ideas? You think somebody told him? How Ramana Maharshi started talking about all those things? He was an illiterate, useless, poor fellow. He was a shepherd. That's the difference between, let us say, Ramana Maharshi and Amritanandamayi. Amritanandamayi is just interpreting whatever is available. Or Jaggi Vasudev or these people. They have learned all kinds of things and they are just giving public talks. If it was their original experience, they just cannot do what they are doing. That's all very simple. How the poets write poem? Why all our Indian classics um, are written by some people about whom we have no idea? It is told that most of the names are not real because they are very sure that it is not their thinking. Their ongoing self just cannot do that. So when they are open-minded, that is also when this original mind, like Tintin pointed out, it is more or less easy to locate. The reference can be made very, very clear. Of course, your experience, because that is a referent which you can experience. The referent of a pen you will appreciate. The referent of wonder you will become more clear. The referent of love you may become very clear. The referent of your mind you may become clear because mind is an ongoing variation only. Only original mind is stable. Okay. But when you want to look at that stable thing, your attention will always, by training, it will just be under the control of the ongoing stream of consciousness only. That is the only problem. That's not enough. Don't focus on the problem, but focus on the possibility. All right, it is exactly 3 hours. When this is too much, especially for, anyway, now Nityan is sitting for another 1 hour or so, nobody would notice it, but still, this is enough to be clear about. You have become more or less clear about the possible, probable nature of this, of the referent of original mind, which is capable of originality. That's not a thing. But this is your conceptual clarity. You have got sufficient languages to describe what is original mind. But this is a referent which you have to feel. You have to, your being has to get, your being has to taste it. If original mind is like a cup of tea, you have to drink it, you have to taste that original mind. But the problem is the attention, because of so many years of experience, will try to get a definite feel of it. Because all these years, attention has been getting something solidly logical. There is something to access, something to, some referent was there, a certain thought or a certain idea. But original mind is nothingness. There is nothing to feel about it. That's why the Zen calls the original mind a mind of no mind. So I'm just at the culminating point. I'm putting everything into suspense. So you just cannot. It is not easy to sense, like you sense the fire, heat of the fire flame, or you like to feel the sense of your ecstasy in listening to music, or feeling some poetry, etc., or feeling the heartbeat or something like that. Because there is nothing to feel about it, there is nothing to sense about it. Because it is original, there is nothing, it is so-called emptiness. That also have to be careful. But at the same time, don't worry, you will have a convincing moment there, no doubt. That's all. And then you have to be cool. Don't try to grab it. There is nothing to grab. Got it, Tintin? Yeah, that's all. It is more or less like your balance on the bicycle. You cannot precisely identify what is balance in your body. So it is nothing very surprising that you cannot feel original mind. When you are on the cycle, you balance it and you go. What is balance and all, you just cannot know that. But you experience it when you do the cycling. Similarly, you will sort of experience the somewhat around the bush of that original mind. So for that, as I told you, one of the roundabout strategies is to look at everything as if you see, or just as a metaphor, as if you see for the first time. It may be a little difficult, but let's say the ancient monasteries were all in forest. In forest, everything is unclear. So here, everything is very clear to you. So it is very difficult to look at it as new. Your house, your room, your table, your cooking utensils, your kitchen, everything is clear. So prepare a list. What are the things that are most familiar to you? Like the dress you take in the morning to wear, your chair, your table. List out all those things. The most familiar. Begin with things, then the plate or the cup in which you take the tea or the very tea. Okay. Begin with the 3, 4 items, or begin at least with one item. All right. All these things you have to try. I hope you are trying every day when you are about to sleep to see the you sleeping there. That also is more or less the same only. You are taking you for granted, just like that you go to bed, lie down, take the blanket or take a position and just go to sleep. That is also one of the most taken for granted activity. Now with all your awareness, conscious attention, you try to identify what is happening. It's not, do not expect anything, just to see what is happening. Just to see what is sleeping there. You are taken for granted. You say you are familiar with you. What familiar with you? You are that which is familiar with you only, nothing more than that. So, look at your sleeping and look at the way you lie down. Look at your blanket, look at the dress you are wearing, look at the bed, look at the pillow, look at the design of the pillow, look at the part of the pillow. Don't look overall. You are looking at overall looking. When you go to your bike the first day, you looked at every part of the bike or car or the house. Now you just see the bike, that's all. Similarly, don't just see the bird, don't just see the plate of food, don't just see the wife, don't just see the child. All right, any questions?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Just do it. I think I told you, life is very interesting, life is very mysterious. But those who are regularly working and regularly living in a place do not expect mystery all the time. But all these are, we are practicing in the runway. All these are putting 1 gram each of, 1 spoon each of sugar in the platform. In the platform balance, it's a natural process. 1 kilogram weight is there. So that balance is touching the ground or on the platform. And then the other one is on a high. And then you go on putting 1 gram or 1 spoon each of sugar in this. Till 995 gram, till 995 gram, this platform will be up and the other platform will be down. You pour the last 5 gram, it comes like this, It makes a lot of movements because, and then comes to a standstill. That is nature process. Till 99 degrees centigrade, there is no turbulence on the water surface. So just to be there. So when the 99 degree will reach for you, do not wait for that. Just to be aware. Just to keep on original. The original mind is approaching everything as original. First stage. That's the third aspect. Because for the child, everything is fresh, everything is new, everything is wonderful, everything is so fresh. and you just practice it for maximum about 10, 14 days. Then it will become your habit. You see, even I feel so happy to tell you all these things. What is the referent? What is the logic of my happiness? Similarly, I want every one of you also to feel happy. That kind of a happiness. It is just a word to use to refer to that state. It's a kind of cool, just to be cool. So